I'm 67, and I'm told I'm a survivor of oropharyngeal head and neck cancer. I'm counting on that bit, the surviving bit. Um, I was asked to talk about my experience because the suggestion was that I might have some unique insight into the treatment I underwent. I'm not sure that's really true because, quite honestly, every one of us is going to have a different experience. We're going to be diagnosed at different stages. We're going to undergo different treatments. We will have different side effects from treatments. In the end, the hope, of course, is we'll all have exactly the same outcome. For over 30 years, I've been a consultant surgeon practicing in ear, nose, and throat surgery. And for the last 5 years of my career, I was particularly working in a 2-week wait clinic. Now, most of the people watching this will know what a 2-week wait clinic is. It's where the GP sends you when there's a concern that you might have an underlying malignancy. So for a long time, I was screening for this sort of thing. And one day I was sitting here at home in this very study, and I was sort of sitting like this. And I thought, I can feel a gland in my neck. And I thought, no, I started prodding around and thought, I'm feeling the hyoid bone. It's the bone just above your larynx. Then I thought, no, I'm feeling my vertebral spine. It's a bit of bone sticking out. Trouble is, by the end of a week, I could now feel something that I could roll around between finger and thumb. This was something about 2 centimeters wide, and I thought, there's something wrong here. So I quickly got on the phone to one of my colleagues and said, can you take a look at this? I nipped off to see the GP only 2 days later, and he said, well, Liam, he said, you're the expert in this. What do we do? So I said, well, nowadays, ultrasound is particularly good at assessing glands, telling me is there anything seriously wrong. So within 48 hours there, I was having an ultrasound in what's called a one-stop clinic. My friend was able to take a biopsy there, looking with an ultrasound to make sure he had a sample. And we agreed at the end of all that, he'd phone me with the result. Now, that won't work for everyone, but it did for me, because when I got the news, there I was, sitting at home. And when the news came through, it was not what I was expecting. I had been worried about lymphoma. I certainly hadn't thought about a squamous cell carcinoma. But the moment I heard this, the second thing I heard was that it was related to HPV-16, the human papillomavirus. As soon as I heard that, I was slightly reassured that whatever else I went through, there was going to be a good response to treatment. The big question here is, where was the primary? I had a gland in my neck. It was malignant. We knew that wasn't the primary cancer. Somewhere there was a primary cancer lurking. And once we'd heard HPV, it was most likely it was going to be somewhere in the back of my throat. So I underwent a CT scan. I underwent an MRI scan. Neither of those showed any abnormality at all. And here's the snag, I had no symptoms. All I had was a totally painless gland in my neck. I had no pain on swallowing. I had no pain going up to my ear. And again, swallowing was perfectly comfortable. So along I came for my first operation. The first operation was really hunting for that primary. I underwent a tonsillectomy, taking both tonsils out, and I underwent base of tongue surgery, what's called robotic surgery. That was a fairly unpleasant procedure afterwards. I was pretty sore, but 2 weeks later, back I was in for further surgery. The next operation involved taking out teeth. I wasn't looking forward to this because I've always looked after my teeth, but I was going to undergo radiation, that I knew. I was worried I was going to lose all my teeth, and it was a great surprise to find all I had to lose was the 4 wisdom teeth and the 2 teeth in front of them. So I ended up then having a total of 8 dental extractions and bilateral neck dissections. Well, as if that wasn't enough, 2 weeks later, I underwent a further operation. And the final operation was basically a redo of the first robotic surgery. There had been fairly close margins, so they wanted to make certain that everything had been removed. And thank goodness, eventually they found out in the final operation there was no residual tumor at all looking very favorable. Once they had staged my cancer, there had to be a decision. Did I need chemotherapy? And if I was going to undergo radiation, did I undergo the conventional full dose radiation? Or did I undergo reduced dose? Because again, there's a very strong feeling that we might just be over-treating this particular condition. Radiation is not without its problems. It does have side effects. If you can get away with lower doses, you'll try to. I was torn, because I was praying when it came to randomization, let me have the 5 weeks, please, not the 6 weeks. In the end, I drew the 6 weeks of radiation. I thought, rats. Actually, in the end, I thought, no, probably better, frankly, to go with the conventional treatment. I'm still not sure to this day. Fortunately, though, I didn't have to undergo chemotherapy. So now I know that once everything had healed, I could start my treatment. I was looking forward then to 6 weeks of radiation therapy. This was after a gap. I think it was about 6 weeks after my last surgery. 5 days a week, you're in there for about half to 3/4 of an hour, and then you're off home again. And for the first 2 weeks, you don't notice a thing. Then you start to notice a slight suntan. There's a little bit of a sunburn on the side of the neck. By the end of 6 weeks, I certainly knew I'd had radiation. And they had warned me of this. The 2 weeks after I finished radiation were probably the worst time of the lot. But throughout the treatment, again, there was a lot of support. I was being regularly assessed, especially monitoring my weight. And the one thing that everyone has been pushing, and I would push this, is the importance, if you possibly can, to continue with a normal swallow. You're going to be sore. It is actually physically difficult as well as sore to swallow, but you've got to try and persist as long as you can. Now, there are various options to tube feeding. A lot of departments will actually suggest a PEG. This is putting a tube directly through the stomach wall into your stomach. It sounds awful, but it's actually a terribly simple procedure. And you can pour food through that tube. And if you're sore, there's no swallowing to do. Just go straight into your stomach. Most of us will know about a nasogastric tube. That's a tube up your nose, down your throat. And again, I mean, that's a bit more unsightly, but you're going to be able to get some food in you. You must maintain your weight through treatment. But also, if you possibly can, you must try and maintain a normal swallow. So you're regularly weighed. I managed to struggle on. I was sore. I battled on regardless. I got an awful lot of help from everybody. And I managed, despite the odds, to get away without tube feeding. I managed to maintain my weight. I managed to pour calories down inside me and got through it. At the end of it all, as I said, I was very sore, but that recovered with time. I lost my sense of taste. That I won't forget in a hurry. It must have been about 2 months after I finished treatment. I was suddenly sitting there one night and I thought, I can taste things again. It was literally overnight the sense of taste came back and I was really beginning to despair. I lost some hair. And you can tell looking back, I can't afford to lose hair. The hair I lost was right at the back of my head. I ended up with the sort of haircut that you'd have seen in Cromwell's Roundhead Army, sort of a hairline like that. It would have been fine for World War II and a sergeant major, but it did look a bit, I thought that's not going to come back. It did. It grew back in time. The other thing, a lot of people will experience a weakness of their shoulder. After you've had the sort of neck surgery I had, there's a nerve that can be bruised. Not divided, but bruised. And for 6 months, my right shoulder, this is the side that didn't have the tumor, didn't have a cancer, my right shoulder was very, very weak. And I used to be shaving, looking in the mirror. And 6 months on, I was shaving one morning and I suddenly looked and thought, it's back. The muscles had all come back overnight. So I've been extremely lucky. The various side effects I could have had, they recovered in time. Watch out for bright sunlight. I found it was a glorious spring, and during the start of the lockdown, I took every opportunity to sit out in the garden, but I very quickly learned you wrap your neck in a scarf. So I got one of those scarves that you see the special forces wear in the desert or American Sniper, and wrapped it around my neck, and I thought I looked terribly dashing, but it did protect my neck as well. Spirits. I've never been a great one for spirits, but I quickly learned that something like a Manhattan, I poured myself one day and I thought, it burned, and I gave it away. Just at Christmas a couple of weeks ago, I thought, I made myself a dry martini. I'm never going to drink spirits again, that's for certain. But generally, I've been very lucky. I got through treatment without needing supplementary feeding, without needing a tube. Because of that, my swallow improved quickly. And what am I left with now? A slightly dry throat. I still know on that side of my throat at the back, it's not the way it was. But I've got my sense of taste back. Everything is recovered. And at a year from completion of treatment now, touch wood, regular follow-ups, everything's going fine.